When I started as a strength and conditioning coach. I graduated from exercise science from Auburn, and then I was a strength and conditioning coach in Alabama at Samford University. And then I got a phone call from a buddy of mine that said if I shaved my head, and that's when I had nice, blonde locks. That was before I lost all my hair. He said, if you shave your head, then you'll get a body double job for Bad Boys 2 in Miami. And I was like, done. So I shaved my head. I got the job. I drove down to Miami from Alabama. This is 2001.
That's how I started. Unbelievable.
And then, did that. They were only paying like $300 a day, but I was like a stunt double, body double for that movie. It was a lot of fun. And then I called my parents and I was like, I'm not coming back. And then I walked into Crunch to get a personal training job. And I ended up having like 30 something clients like within the first month. And, the rest is history.
Took off from there.
Yeah. And then, there's a whole, it's a 21-year story. So it's a 22-year story now, but it's long. But let's start off, let's let people know who you are first and foremost.
Yeah.
We've never met.
Yeah.
We thought we did. You looked familiar, but we've never met. One of the main reasons I want you to know that I responded was I was very humbled by your words. It meant a lot that you reached out to me. I think it's important. I think oftentimes we do these things, and guys like myself, we're entrepreneurs. We work hard. We do all this stuff, and sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes we sit back and we're like, is anybody listening? Does anybody give a crap?
Yeah.
And for you to reach out and actually say like, hey, I want to be a part of this, I thought that was awesome, and so that's why I responded. And so this is a great platform for us to just have a good conversation, man. And I want to give you the platform to speak your mind, and if you have any questions for me, and let's just chop it up. But for starters, give a little context of who you are and
absolutely,
and all that.
So I appreciate greatly you gave me the opportunity to come through, because one of the main things was, my wife and I, we have our stepson passed away. My stepson, her son passed away. It's going to be 12 months on June 13th. Tragically shot, was killed. Very devastating time for us. And we got a lot of pain in our hearts, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I'm getting coached by Wes Watson. And, And he let me know, he says, you got to reach out. You got to speak about this, because if not, it's a pain that you're not going to be able to get off.
Yeah.
And that's why I reached out to you, because I saw your material and I was like, you know what? It doesn't hurt. What's the worst that can happen? You could say no. And that's how we came about with this. Now, just a little bit about myself. My wife and I been married. It's going to be 15 years this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we have a little boy that's 14.
Amazing.
Great kid. Goes to a Jesuit school here in Miami called Belen Jesuit. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, been around since like 1854.
Oh, wow.
Worked very hard to get in there. Plays football. He's a quarterback. Also plays catcher, playing baseball. Does very well there. Got a little girl. She's 11. She ice skates.
Amazing.
And she was actually in a tournament now. And she got 2 first places in Estero Island. So
I bet that's a great, proud moment right there.
Yeah, she's super excited, working hard there. She also rides horses. So one of the things that, those are the 2 kids obviously we have now, and then our oldest that passed away. And the main purpose of me reaching out was, it's about getting the word out, because our oldest was struggling with substance abuse. We were caught off guard with this. And one of the things we realized was, when we were at the viewing, there was like 3-4 people came up to me, Manning, that they had the same issues in their family. But we would have never known that.
Right.
And when I heard that, it was something that, and I told my wife, I was like, we have to talk about this. Right. And it's about becoming vulnerable. It's something that's very difficult to talk about, because it's personal stuff, but I guarantee it'll have a huge impact on people in many, many areas, right?
100%.
It could be parents that have kids. It's a message towards kids as well.
Right. The
younger youth. At the same time, it's, with this whole struggle, there was a period of time where 2 months in, I got all the way down. I was originally 260 pounds. In July of 2019.
Okay.
I was very heavy, right? And I lost weight all the way down to like 210. But a period of 2 months, I gained almost 35 pounds when he passed away. And obviously it has to do with depression and, just all these things that are kicking
like emotional eating mostly, or drinking, or
well, one of the things I realized was I don't drink. I don't have any addictions. The only one I do have is food.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how powerful an addiction like that is. And then in my mind, I'm like, man, if something like food can hurt you so much like that, imagine people that have a drinking addiction, a drug addiction, right? People have porn addiction, right? I mean, there's so many things out there that people are struggling with, and you don't realize the impact those things can have on your life until you deal with something really devastating, right? That could really bring you to your knees. And I gained 35 pounds in 2 months, and I looked at myself and I was like, how did you get here so fast?
Right. It can happen like that.
It was it was just so quick, you know, and you don't realize it because you're operating, but you're not. It's kind of like you're not conscious. You're just operating, right? Because your brain's thinking about something else. You're operating on something else, and you just don't realize how far off you can get off track so fast. And that was a big realization, right? And then from there, it was adjustment to come back down, right? So I mean, there's certain things that I've done in the last 10 months that have been very helpful. And I know there's a lot of people struggling with things that could be very helpful for them. You know, that could be a big impact for them.
What do you think was the trigger for you? So once you went through that period, once you gained all that weight, when did the light bulb go off and say, hey, I can't keep doing this?
It was something like this. It was a podcast.
Okay.
So Brad Lee had Wes on his podcast, and Brad Lee asked Wes, what do you say to someone that has depression? And you know, Wes has very colorful words,
right?
Obviously, right? But his statement was, depression is a magnification of the past, and you're not going that way. And the minute he said that resonated with me big time. Why? Because for 2 months straight, almost literally, I'd go drop off my kid at school, I'd come back home, probably cry for hours, bawling. I'd go to the office, sit in the office, just look at pictures on the wall and start bawling, crying, right? So it was a daily repetitive process of just reliving all the regrets, all the hurt, all the pain, because we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But it was just reliving it over and over and over. So when I heard that, I had never heard that before, and I was like, that's 100% correct.
Say that phrase one more time, because I want to make sure people hear that. Depression
is a magnification of the past, and you're not going that way. Yep. And
it's very powerful, very powerful.
Oh my God. It's like when I heard that, it was like something that hit me right in the heart, man. I was like, you know, the only time, one thing I realized was that, like right now, talking about it, if I'm not crying right now, I probably will eventually. Yeah. But at this moment, you can't feel depressed right now. Yeah. Why? Because we're elevated right now. We're talking about something elevated. We're talking about changing, winning, impacting. But when you are in a low emotional mood, right, and you're thinking about the past and all the things from behind, is when all those emotions kick in. And if you don't catch it, you're just kind of going down and down and down and down. And it's a realization that, you know, the only thing you can control is one step at a time.
Yep. Day by day.
Day by day. And you hear that saying, but until you really have to operate day by day, you really don't understand the importance of operating day by day. It's the same thing in the physical world, right? How do you lose 10 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds? It's day by day. It's workout by workout, meal by meal.
So what'd you do at that? So once you heard that, then what were the changes that you had to make for yourself in order to get out of that where you're just beating yourself up every day, you know? Like, so where did as far as like, so now you heard that statement, you heard that podcast, that triggered something, right? But now you got to put something to action. You know, you heard something, so now you got to, you know, actually activate it. What did you do in that moment?
Well, we got to go back a few years to go over that. Because in July of 2019, my little boy was at a baseball tournament in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It's a Cal Ripken tournament. It's a beautiful tournament. And he had a great defensive tournament, but offensively he struggled. And he grounded out. He didn't hustle down the line, and he ended up getting benched. And we got back to the cabin. It was 5 families we were traveling together, this huge cabin. It was an amazing trip, tons of fun. But I led into him about giving effort, giving 100%. You know, this talk that parents give their kids,
right?
Coaches give their players, quote unquote, right? But while I'm giving them this talk, I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. And the reason why was because at that point, I'm 260 pounds. I can't walk upstairs without being winded. I can't control what the hell I put in my mouth. You know, we're having tons of challenges with our oldest. You know, and you can feel, you can sense when you're not operating at a high level, right? You know you can do more, but you're not. And I just felt horrible. And I actually heard, it's another reason we talk about podcasts, reaching out, about getting the word out. I heard David Goggins on a podcast with Ed Milet. And Goggins talked about the accountability mirror. I don't know if you've heard of that before.
Yeah.
So he brings up the accountability mirror, and I felt horrendous. I was like, how could you talk to this kid you love so much and be such a hypocrite to talk about giving effort and going all in, giving 100% while you're not doing that in your life?
Right.
And that, as a matter, that July 31st, we got home from the tournament. Never forget, he had a bunk bed, and I sat down with him in the bunk bed and I apologized to him. And I said, look, you know, I'm sorry. You know, I told you about giving 100%, but I'm not giving 100%. But I said, but I promise you, you're never gonna see that happen again. I promise you. And literally the next day, I started getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, started to run. It was very difficult because at 260 pounds, toll it takes, my heels still are destroyed. I don't know if I have like Achilles tendonitis or I don't know what I got back there, but it's very difficult. But I lost weight. I became a self-improvement maniac. I mean, I started reading as much as I could about every subject about improving myself. I picked up every podcast I could on self-improvement and everything in my marriage, with kids, parenting, learning, anything I could get my hands on. I just became so consumed with it, and I wanted to make so many changes, right? And it's also helped business, right? Because I'm an entrepreneur, right? I work in the financial services industry. I got a team of people I lead, but you can't lead them the right way if you're not the right way in your own heart and your mind.
It starts with you always.
100%.
You know, I like the analogy in the plane. You know, if the plane is going down, you put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on others. And you can't lead from an empty cup. So if you're not constantly filling your cup up, then you're not able to pour into other people. And most people try to lead from an empty cup. They think they know what they know, and you never know what you know. Like, you always have to grow, learn. It's a constant process of becoming. Like, that never stops. That's what No Days Off is. So No Days Off is never taking a day off on you. It's a commitment to becoming your best self every single day. So every single day you wake up, you have air in your lungs, you're gonna do something intentional to become a better version of yourself. Self-awareness, applying that, recognizing when you do things that are wrong, owning it, correcting it. You're gonna make mistakes, but don't make the same mistakes. And that's like what my philosophy is, and what we're trying to, you know, take across the globe, really. So that's
what changes people.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
That message is what impacts, because I mean, just listen to these other people. The change I had in our house was because it was just the striving to learn more, to get better every single day. And that progression was a big deal because I built a lot of habits through those years.
Yeah.
I built a lot of habits those years that I didn't have, right? And I don't identify a lot with that old individual. But what I realized was that old person that you want to shed, that you want to get rid of, he's always waiting there.
Yeah.
He or she's always waiting there, right?
Yeah.
And when we had this challenge that our oldest passed away, he was right there waiting.
Right.
And that's where the eating came back, you know, just the bad habits came back. So once I heard that, I went right back. I guess I had such a good foundation already of years of doing this that I was able to identify, and I just got back on it. But the difference was that it wasn't as strong at the beginning. Like, literally getting up, the first thing was attacking to get up in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Because it was every night was going to sleep at, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. You're just thinking. You wake up, take them to school, come home, cry and sleep, right? So it's kind of like you're you're not doing those things, and you think, you're far behind. But waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting back up early in the morning was the first step.
Right.
Then going to the gym was the second step. Listening to a podcast, the next step. Getting the book every single day, reading 10 pages, that's another step.
Right.
And then compounding on that on a daily basis, right? And building upon that is what helped out to be able to move forward, right? Not move forward because you don't move forward, but to have progression on a daily basis, which was a big deal, right? So if the question was what changed at that moment it was years of building new habits that led to where we're at now, where you got a difficult situation and you were able to go back and reflect and then take action on that as well.
Right. So you're a book guy. I'm a book guy. Like, what are some of your favorites?
Outwitting the Devil.
The what?
Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
I've
actually never read that one. So
it's an interesting book because
Think and Grow Rich. I wrote that, read that
so
one.
he wrote Think and Grow Rich, and then he wrote Outwitting the Devil, and it's a conversation between him and the devil.
Oh, okay.
And
Interesting.
I had read that book many, many years ago.
Yeah.
But there's times you skim through a book, and then there's times you actually read the book, right? And it's a conversation between him and the devil. And his wife actually asked for that book not to be published. I don't know when it was written, but it was written a very long time ago. And it wasn't published till many, many years after he passed away because it's very controversial. What's crazy is a lot of things he talks about in there. You got to think about the wisdom he had, thinking about things that we have today and how it's going to affect society and things that's going to be happening. And he talks about it in the book, right? With no knowledge of that back then. So it's a huge dialogue where you have it. It actually talks about introducing yourself to your other self, right? You only realize that person when you go through adversity and certain challenges, And I mean, you think about, even with family, being married 14 years, there's a lot of work in marriage, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of self-improvement in marriage. You know, there's a lot of growing. I'm very lucky. I have an amazing wife. My wife is super tough. She's super strong, and she's an amazing supporter. She is a great mother. Everything is about the kids, very conscious about family. It's very difficult to find nowadays, right? Somebody that's committed to wanting to have that family, right? And we've been through a lot of challenges together, right? Because when you have situations in your home, it really takes a toll. That's one of the things that a lot of families, because we were caught off guard. I don't know if we're going off topic a little bit, but
there's no off topic. You're good.
We were caught off guard. We really had no idea that our oldest was struggling with substance abuse. And I'm not saying that's why he got shot. Okay, he was shot and killed. It was a situation. It was a tragic situation that happened. And I'm not saying that's why he got killed. But we found out he was struggling with substance abuse a few years ago.
Was he in the wrong place at the wrong time, kind of thing? Or?
We don't know all the details of what was it that happened. But he was at it was a supermarket down in Homestead, down here, and he got into an altercation with the owner's son. And from what we understand, he had dropped some money, and then he had left the convenience store, and he came back to get his money, and the kid shot him. Right, the owner's son shot him. We don't know all the details, right? We don't know what was it that happened. We don't know what was the aggression in there.
Right.
What was the challenge? There's a lot of unanswered questions, right?
Which I'm sure is not easy. So
it's not easy because there's a lot of emotions, right? Especially when I raised this kid since he was 11 years old, right? Loved him like if he was my son, you know? But then when you look at your wife's eyes and you just see the emptiness, it's like, it's tough. Right, but you can also, it's kind of like you have the option, either you're going to pour fuel on a fire, right? That doesn't solve anything either, right? At the end of the day, and there's a lot of unanswered questions in that situation. But we did find out a few years ago he was struggling with substance abuse, and that I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but if he wasn't in substance abuse, would he have been where he was at that time?
Right.
Would have been living where he was living at that time? Those are things we'll never have answers to, right? But we were caught off guard with that, just like many families are caught off guard, and it's something so powerful because there's a lot of kids that are hurting out there, and this whole world of social media, this device is amazing for a lot of things. Look how we came in contact, if it's used correctly, but it's also devastating for a lot of people. There's a lot of just the whole idea of trying to fit in, right? And these kids have so much pressure, that peer pressure. People say it's not real. No, peer pressure is real for these kids.
Yeah, for sure. And especially it's amplified because now kids are watching the highlight reel of everybody's lives, and they're not seeing reality, but they're comparing themselves to those highlight reels. So they're comparing people to their filtered pictures, to their, professional videos, to their things that are literally like choreographed, and people aren't showing their mistakes, their failures, their tough times. They're just showing their highlight reels. And so then you got all these kids comparing themselves to things that don't even exist. Like, these people don't even look like this on Instagram. So, it's definitely gotten worse. Social media has made a lot of things, and to your point, some things better, but for the most part, especially with our youth, I think it's been very damaging to the youth. And then it was amplified obviously during COVID as well, because everybody was stuck at home and that's 100%. Living on their phones. So, that amplified it even more.
That was a big deal. Because when you look at social media, right? And I was telling my wife this, for so many years we lived a lie, and it's not that we had a lie between our relationship or with our kids, but we always covered up what was going on in our home. We always covered it up, right? Because you never want your kid to have a bad rap out there, right?
Right.
You want to try to protect his reputation as much as possible. And for so many years, my wife and I, we lived this life that was just so secret. Nobody knew anything. If you looked at us on the outside, we're a great family, right? We are. But inside we were destroyed, right? Because we were having challenges. There were so many obstacles. We didn't know how to maneuver them, And just to that point of social media, when you look at people out there on social media, all they're doing is their highlight reels,
exactly.
Right? And you really don't know what they're going through. It's like, and it's what I told my wife. I was like, we need to talk about this. It's embarrassing in many ways to talk about this, because look, we're all getting graded in our lives, right? And I see it like that now. It's difficult to admit it, but the reality is, our son ended up in substance abuse, and that can happen to anybody. But if you have a grading scale from A to F, and we're getting graded, we got an F on this. Why? Because he ended up on substance abuse. He's shot and killed, right? He's not here with us no more, right? So, and it's, you can say...
just to push back on that a little bit, don't beat yourself up like that. I disagree with that comment. Like, you just said it was a tragic event. It was something that was out of your control, right? Yeah. This is not something that I think y'all failed as parents by any means. So, if you want to give yourself a C, that would be one thing, but you didn't fail, man. Like, and don't, I would say don't beat yourselves up over that, because hearing the story, and again, I obviously don't know all the details, but you certainly didn't fail, man. It sounds like you obviously are doing a tremendous job with your kids now. I can tell that just from how you talk about them and how proud like you are. So, you haven't failed. You struggled, but I wouldn't put the failure word on there. Well,
the reason why I say that is because what we don't know is, did the substance abuse lead to positioning himself for something like this to happen, right?
Yeah.
But
that's the thing, though. You don't know.
We don't know that, but at the end of the day, I view it as, I look at my boy, my little girl, and it's my job to prepare him. It's my wife's job to prepare him,
right,
to be able to make better decisions. And we obviously can't control our kids, right?
No, yeah.
We can't control what they're going to do in the future, but we have to do our job to guide them in the right path as much as possible. And there were some where we dropped the ball somewhere, just to reality, right? It's tough to admit it, but we dropped the ball somewhere along the line, right?
Do you feel like it was not asking enough questions? Like where do you think, because to your point earlier, you want to have a platform to help people, right? That may be in these type of situations. Well, I think it's important to identify, like straight up, try to identify where you feel like you missed the mark. And then maybe that could help people find an answer, like where do you think, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's hard to identify, right? But if we were to look back, one of the mistakes we made was, he was in a great school down here in Miami.
Yeah.
And he had some challenges. He was playing baseball, had a challenge with the coach. and I knew somebody else that was a coach at another school. He told him, bring him over here. He could play over here. He could play sports. And we took him out of this great school because he was having a challenge, thinking he would be better off somewhere else. We switched him over, and that was the worst decision we could have made. The reason why was because in that school, he ended up doing steroids at a very young age. That was another thing we weren't aware of. I've never done so. I'm on testosterone now because my testosterone was at 300 and something.
Yeah.
Extremely.
So you're on HRT, which is
it wasn't,
not steroids. It's
I needed
hormone replacement therapy.
I needed to replace because I was operating.
Which is normal. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Yeah. So, I mean, your testosterone levels start going down when you're 29. So that's
I wasn't aware of that because I had never done steroids before or nothing like that. So,
well, if you do steroids, then they go down a lot faster. But
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, so.
Which, by the way, how old was he when he started that?
That's the thing. He was probably a sophomore, a freshman, a sophomore.
In high school?
In high school.
Yeah, so that can mess you up mentally even more than physically. Like, it can really damage your mental decisions, who you are becoming, the choices you make. Like, it because you're talking about doing something that he's probably walking around at 1,500, 2,000 testosterone already, and then he's adding a foreign substance to get even more anabolic, which can cause aggression and which can cause,
funny you bring that up.
Bad decisions.
That's what actually was. There was a big transition there. And I don't have fact on this. We heard this through one of his girlfriends that. The coach was selling him steroids, right?
Oh, wow.
In the school. I'm not going to mention the school, obviously, because it's a great school. We have friends there from another sister school, so we would never do that. And I don't have fact on it, right? But that's what I heard.
Wow.
And
that's horrible if that's true.
He changed. He changed so much.
Yeah.
To your point of what you're saying, he went from being like I looked at the pictures, and he went from being this boy, right? This kid. To being like a man in a period of like 12 months.
Yeah.
I mean, he got jacked. And we were so that one of the points of the parents is we were so naive, Manny. We were so naive, man. We missed so many signs, which is what hurts because they were there, but we didn't catch it. And if it's something for the parents, you got to be more aware. You got to be on top of things, right? Yep. If you sense something, you can't look the other way, right? You got to be on top of it, and you can't be worried about whether your kid's going to be your friend or your enemy, or he's going to be upset or not. At the end of the day,
exactly what that was going on in my head while you were saying that. Is like, we're not on this. The parenting is not trying to be their best friend. It's 100%. Not. It's a preparation for life, and it was interesting. I'll get emotional about this. I was working out literally this morning, and I said in the back of my mind, I said, I'm so thankful and grateful for my dad being tough on me and enforcing discipline in my life. As I was here at 5 o'clock in the morning, like I always am, working out, and I was like, I would not be here today as a 45-year-old man if it wasn't for my dad making me get up, making me do stuff, making me do things. Also questioning me, like my dad was notorious for, if I was in a different mood, what's wrong with you, son? What's wrong? What's going on with you? Like asking me. And so when I heard you say that, it triggered something in me. Parents, we have to ask questions. You have to talk to your kids. You have to sit them down. And if there's something off, ask them and talk to them. Don't let them go to their room and slam the door and then, and then the next day, everything's fine. Like, talk, communication. I feel like even with adults everybody's on their phones, everybody's communicating through text, and we don't sit down and do this. And the bottom line is the only way to grow in relationships, whether it's your kids or whether it's your best friend or whether it's your spouse, is you got to talk. You got to talk things out. And conflict is not necessarily bad. If you disagree, it's okay. But there's more similarities in us than differences. And most of the time, if you have a perspective of let's find common ground in our differences, then eventually you'll come to that place. But if you don't talk about it, then you're never going to come to that place. So that just hearing you say that really triggered something in me, just to say, like, communicate, you know, with your kids and talk to them and ask them, like, when you see something off, you gotta recognize it, be aware of it, and say, hey, what's going on with you, you know? And
it's not only communication, it's over communication.
Over communication, exactly.
You can't, looking back, you know, I used to do these things with a walk and talk, right?
Yeah.
I used to go walks with him and talk, and, you know, because you try to do your best. You know what I'm saying? I was young. I was 24 years old when I met my wife. My wife was 27.
Y'all are babies having kids.
Yeah, well, she had Jeremy when she was 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
But my wife is just a triple stud. I mean, she just, you know, did as best as she could, and she did an amazing job. But the challenge is that, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. It is a lot, you know, and there's a lot of things that you become more aware of as you get older and you mature, right? That you're not aware of when you're younger. Right. You know, and that over communication is key, because there has to be, the loudest voice in their head needs to be yours. Mm-hmm. And that relationship needs to be there with them, right? But that point right there, back to what you were talking about, a lot of things changed after that. He really changed a lot after that. And that leads to other things, right? Right. Which leads to weed usage, right? He was smoking weed, which doesn't, I mean, look, that's something that's normal nowadays, right? I know I don't smoke weed, but I heard there's a lot of benefits to it. The challenge is when kids and people are using this not for health reasons, right, but they're using it for other reasons. Yeah, I mean, anything that you're using to purposely alter your mind or to hide what's really going on. To hide what's really going on. Exactly. And more than likely also what happened to him, and not to speculate, but when you're on steroids, you're so you're like all the time that you need something to bring you down. And so I'm sure it calmed him down. Like, it made him feel a little bit more normal, but also then what does it do? It expands your brain to, then the curiosity starts to come out. So then you get curious about this and that and another. And to your point earlier too, like, we have to be the loudest in their heads because they're being influenced by so many different things, by their coaches, good or bad, by their friends, good or bad, by social media, by TV, by celebrities, they're being influenced by everyone. So if you're not influencing them, then that's a problem. So that's 100% fact. And other kids, right? I mean, these kids are dangerous nowadays. Yeah. I mean, I have a friend of ours that we found out through some people that their kid was vaping, right? And it seems like not a big deal, right? But it's the nicotine ones, right? I don't know. I don't know what it was she was doing. I'm pretty sure aren't vaping. But vaping nicotine is supposed to be nicotine based, from what I understand. I'm almost positive it is. But I think you could smoke weed in there as well. I guess I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, you can. But I know, like, the popular vaping right now, it is literally more addicting than heroin. Wow. Nicotine is the strongest drug out there. And I've heard horror stories of kids being addicted to this stuff because they're making it strawberry flavor and mango flavor, and then you get addicted to the big smoke and the smell and the taste, and then next thing you know, and then the nicotine, and then it's literally one of the hardest things. I was watching a podcast the other day, and it was a comedian talking about how he got over heroin addiction, he got over cocaine, he got over like all the major drugs, and he can't stop smoking. Wow. So back to what that, and that's interesting that you bring that up, because we found out, and originally I was like, you know what, it's not a big deal. I'm not gonna say nothing. But one of Jeremy's, one of our oldest's, one of his ex-girlfriends came by my office. She wanted to plan certain areas of her finances, and we're talking, and she tells me that for years, Jeremy had been snorting cocaine, right? Oh, wow. So when I heard that, number one, I was destroyed. I was like, how? You know what I'm saying? Like, how did we not catch it, right? Right. But then number two, it hit me. I was like, man, if we were so caught off guard, so many families in the same situation. And then I thought about this kid. It's a great kid. And I was like, I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to tell the mom. I was like, I'm going to talk to the mom, because we wanted somebody to tell us. We would have wanted somebody to tell us.
Right.
And they didn't. And there's people that knew, right? Because those little kids' friends, they know what's going on, man.
Yeah.
They know. You can't hide nowadays, right? You can't hide. With that device, kids can't hide, right? Yeah. Everybody knows what they're doing, what's going on, what's happening. Just they stay quiet, right?
Right.
And spoke to the mom, came to the office, had a conversation. And one of the things, I reached out to you after I had that conversation, because she comes in, she starts bawling, crying in my office. I explained to her what I knew, and that's a very touchy subject, right? Because that could go
it could go south
positive,
real
like
easy.
it could be negative, right? Thankfully, she's a very mature mother, right? And she started bawling, crying in my office, saying that she was praying the day before for somebody to talk to about this, because she needed somebody to give a message and you bring something to the table. And when I heard that, I was like, you know what? I was like, there's a lot of people that need someone to put a message out there, right?
Yep.
And literally she was like, I need you to talk to my daughter. I was like, sure, we'll schedule it, we'll put some notes. She goes, we need to do it today. Literally picked up her kid from school, brought her to my office that day. She brought her to my office.
Wow.
And we spoke for about an hour. And I don't know what the impact will be long term, but the feeling of being able to deliver a message where I showed her a hurt family, right? I showed her hurt family. I said, look, it's not the vaping. It's that you're compromising in your brain, that you give into bad habits. And the minute you compromise in your brain that you give into bad habits, it's only a matter of time in the future before you give into other bad habits.
Right.
And then when you have something really difficult happen in your life, those bad habits are either they're gonna kill you, or your good habits are gonna save you. And you really don't have control, which is, we're going back to the whole food situation, right? It seems so silly, right? You talk about it, you say, oh, you're addicted to food. Well, how about for that person that's addicted to drinking, right?
Right.
That every day they go home and they have to have a drink, or they have to do this or have to do that. And they think, I really don't have a problem. Well, you don't have a problem until you really do have a problem in your life, right? And then when you can't stop it, then your life goes backwards. So I view that kid as a kid that maybe you can make a difference in them. And like that, how many families are hurting out there right now in situations like this, that they're having challenges?
No, I mean, there's people in general hurting. Like, there's a lot of, I think again, this is probably the good thing about social media, is like when you're on social media and you hear all the positivity from people like Wes and Eddie Milet and, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, all these people talking and helping people and having these conversations and things like that. I think the reason why it's getting so popular is because there's so many people that need to hear this stuff. There's so many people that need to listen to these kind of podcasts that can help implement things in their lives to help them, and that's why I think it's very important that we keep the conversation going. We keep offering advice, even though it's not, necessarily, advice is from your own experience. So only certain advices can actually relate to certain people. But I think you still got to do it. You still got to offer it, and you still got to allow people to possibly implement it in their own lives so that you can help them. So
100%. And like you were saying earlier, you don't know if people listen, right? People are always listening.
Yeah. They might not let you know, but they're listening.
People are listening. The challenge is, most people are not brutally honest with themselves that they need to change, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem, right?
Yep.
And
people are listening.
So people are listening, right? You think people aren't listening, but they are. But we were talking about people being honest with themselves that they have to change. Most people are not going to be honest with themselves. They got to change.
Yep.
And then most people are not going to tell the truth, right? Coming out, talking about things like this, it hurts to have a conversation like this.
Yeah.
It really does. But the only way you have an impact, as I see it now, is by being honest and truthful, where you can help that person that really is looking for a message and that resonates with that person, right? Maybe it doesn't with everybody, right? There's people going to listen to this probably say we're full of crap, and then there's going to be others that say, wow, I really needed this, this was really important, and it'll help them out.
Yeah, but the truth is, like, especially, like, I don't give a shit what people think, you know what I mean? Like, I never have. I'm gonna speak my truth. I'm gonna be authentic. I'm gonna be who I am, and if people don't like it, then that's their problem. I think that's one of the issues in our world today, is that everybody wants to be liked instead of respected, and people just want to, like, say the right thing and do the right thing when, well, what if that's not who you are? Like, you shouldn't fake it. You need to be authentic, and I think we've lost that in society, is just being authentically who we are. It's not an excuse, and I don't mean, like, I can't stand it when someone says, oh, that's just who I am, when they're doing stuff that's not right. I don't think you can use that as an anchor or excuse, but I think that as long as you're true to who you are while you pursue who you should be or who you're trying to be, then that's being authentic,
100%. And it'll eat you alive if you're not authentic, right?
Exactly. Like, most people, like, they're living like a double life, almost like they're. So I heard a CIA agent one time talk about it. He said that a lot of people have their public persona, so what they allow anyone to see. Then they have their, like, private persona, who they let their family see, their friends see, and then they have their secret life that they barely let anybody see, if anybody. And he said that the CIA agent was talking about how, like, that's how he infiltrates, like, people as a spy, is because if he can get in to your secret life, then he's got you. And
that's big right there that you're saying that, because that was me and my wife, right? We had the life you live outside, right? Mm-hmm. That you're a happy family, no challenges, no problems, right? And then we had the life we were living that we were devastated inside, right? Dealing with challenges and obstacles, and how do you maneuver this and how do you maneuver that, and trying to keep it as quiet as possible, because you don't want the family, like, for years, nobody in the family knew anything because we didn't want to hurt them, right? And because it's hurt you, that hurts when your grandchild is struggling, right? Or your nephew's struggling. It hurts, right? And it hurts them, right? And you don't want to put that pressure on other people, right? It's until you can't hide it no more, right? One of the things that when he passed away, you can't hide that anymore. No. You can't hide the news. You can't hide the body. You can't hide the viewing. You can't hide the pain. You can't hide anything, right? So it's kind of like it's out in the open. And I told my wife, I was like, for years we've, just lived this life of just covering this stuff up, and now you can't hide it no more. There's no hiding it. Right. It's out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's it. So at the end of the day, and one of the things that I realize now, Manning, is that people are going to judge anyways.
Yeah, 100%.
They're going to judge anyways. Always. Because before this happened, people would judge. They had their own things. They would say comments, right? Right. They had no freaking idea. But they had their assumptions. Right. Right? Yeah. And then after, guess what? They're still going to what? They're going to say something. So at the end of the day, they're going to talk anyways. It is what it is. Like, just feel good with yourself that you're being authentic. We're getting the message out. Yep. And you could be yourself, where at the end of the day, you're not feeling bad, right? Because if not, it's eating you up inside because you're not being who you're supposed to be. Right.
And I think talking about it, again, it goes back to the over communicating, but even talking about it for yourself is healing. Like, that's a process of healing, is talking about it. Like, sometimes if you leave it on the inside and you don't let it out, then it doesn't get out of you, And then to your point, it's not helping someone else out there that could possibly hear it. And that's the thing, like, for me, especially lately, that I've noticed, is that I'm getting a lot of satisfaction in that one response. I'm getting a lot of satisfaction in that one DM of people saying, you're helping me, like, because if it's just one person that says something, like, you're doing something good, and I try to be very intentional in my interactions. So I call it leaving people better than I found them. So I hope today you walk out of here and you're like, I feel better. You know, I just feel better. Like, because that's what I want. Like, I want you to walk away better than you walked in. Like, you know, and I think if we have that intentionality in our lives, where when we come across a stranger, when we come across a friend, when we come across a family member, and we're intentionally leaving them better than we found them, then it's just gonna make it for a better world, right? Like, people are just gonna walk away feeling better. And it sounds juvenile or it sounds simple, but it really is that simple. It really is. And I feel like a lot of people are not intentional with that. So
what you're saying is people call it hunky-dory, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to make people feel good or make them feel better. But the reality is that the primary reason of getting the word out was because I had a conversation with Wes, and I told him I was struggling with something where, you know, on the way here, for an example, you know, crying coming over here, I'm like, really going to talk about this situation. You know, like, you would never think you're going to talk about a situation that happened in your life where this kid you love, you raise him like he's your kid, your wife's son gets shot and killed, right? You're going to have a conversation about this. It's painful to think about that, right? And there's a lot of regret. There's a lot of regret. There's a lot of regret in our hearts, at least in mine, right? And when you experience real regret, you can't get rid of it, man. It's just like, you can't get rid of it. And I had a conversation with Wes to the extent where I told him, you know, I got a lot of regret in my heart, you know, and I don't know how to heal this. He goes, you're never going to heal it. You just need to talk about it. And you need to talk to people about this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's every day. It could be anything. It could be any trigger. It could be any picture. It could be any video you watch. Anything just puts you back in a perspective right away where you're just, everything comes back of just this avalanche of stuff that's happened, right? A small example, and we're going to get back to the regret because it's important, because that's a big topic. Just don't let me forget about that. One of the things that I talked to him about was, you know, I would hug my little girl, for an example, right? And I just start bawling, crying. And as I'm crying, all I could think about is looking up at Jeremy when we went to go identify the body, right? Thinking about seeing him on one of those metal rolling tables, and the pain in my wife's eyes, like, you know, it's something so powerful. You can never get rid of those things, you know? The viewing, right? Just the whole, just, it's so powerful when you think about those things, you know, and you can't get rid of it. You can't, those things, you can never get them out of your mind, right? You can't erase them. It's something that I don't think I've ever experienced PTSD, and I don't ever want to talk about that to disrespect people that are in the military that deal with real PTSD, you know, but I don't know if that's what that is.
Well, I think grief can be considered PTSD for sure.
Possible. And I don't want to, one thing
it's different, but it's not, I don't think you're comparing. It's just a term.
There you go. Yeah.
There's a military term for it, but there's also grief. Like, there is truth to that. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And these are just images that pop into your mind, right? On an instant.
Yeah.
Lots of times they just pop in. And so, you know, talking about it is healing. Right. It is also a process of bringing awareness to others. Because, I mean, look, this kid, Jeremy, I mean, this kid was amazing, man. I mean, like, he was super good looking. My wife is beautiful. Yeah. My wife's got these beautiful light eyes, you know, and Jeremy was just like his mom. Good looking kid. I mean, I used to call him Rico Suave, you know, like he could have any girl he wanted. He was like a chameleon. He could fit into a group of kids that were going off the wrong path. He could fit in with the group of guys that were in business. Like, he could have a conversation with a guy that he would have a conversation with you right now, right, and flow perfectly. I mean, this kid had everything ahead of him in his life, right? And look where we're at right now, right? And like that, there's so many people, right? Like, even coming over here, driving over here, there's a certain section you got to drive through, right? And you see so many people in the street, you know, that at one point in their life, they weren't always like that.
Right.
they weren't always like that. There were decisions that were made during their life that led them to a path like that, right? And there were things that happened in their life that led them to a path like that. So this is a message where, I mean, it's so many avenues. It's the message to the parents with their kids to be more aware, to be more conscious, to have more communication. Then there's the message to the people that they're young adults already. You got to have some responsibility in your life too, right? You can't blame your parents for everything. You know,
right.
It's like the story that you got two kids. They both grow up in a torn home. Parents are drug addicts, in and out of prison, tons of challenges. One turns out to be a major success and the other one turns out to be a major failure. And they asked the one that ended up being a major failure, why did this happen in your life? He said, well, I grew up in a home where my parents were drug addicts, in and out of prison. I had a very difficult life. And then they asked the one that was a success, well, why did you have success in your life? Well, I grew up in a home where my parents were drug addicts. They were in and out of prison. So it's the same household, but one developed a different mindset. So this is not a cop-out either, right? You can't be blaming your parents for your challenges either and for things you do either, right? But, you know, if you're a young adult and you're listening to this, you know, you got to kind of take responsibility for your actions. And you got to identify if you're going down a wrong path. You might want to try to stop it before it becomes unstoppable, you know, because for us, something so visual as well. And I don't even know what he was on. I don't know what drugs he was on. We don't know that. I haven't looked. I don't know if my wife looked at it. I haven't. The toxicology report. I really don't know what it is. I heard there was also pain medication situation there as well. But when we went to his apartment to clean out his apartment that day, it was so sad because, you know, there was burnt tinfoil all over the apartment. You know, I don't know what he was smoking, but he was smoking something, right? And I don't know what it is. I don't know much about drugs to know what it is, and we really don't.
If you're smoking out of tinfoil, it's either crystal meth or it's cocaine or it's, you know, it's something like that. It's something not good. So
yes, I really don't know what it was, but it was all over the apartment. That was heartbreaking, man. Like, to see your wife looking at that, my boy with us looking at that, and it's just like, wow, you know, like, this is him now, but how many millions of other kids, millions of other adults, right, are in this situation? And a message like this could be, well, you know, you got to link pleasure to pain and pain to pleasure, right? Meaning whatever is pleasure seeking for you today could be painful for you in the future, right? And if pleasure seeking for you is drug usage, drinking, alcohol abuse, pornography abuse, nicotine overeating, right? Those are pleasure seeking temporary things that could lead to massive pain in the future. And you gotta, you know, this is to identify, to say, coming from a family that's destroyed, you know, like, you gotta think about, when you're not under that influence, do you want to cause this pain to your family?
Right.
Do you want to cause that pain, right? You got to really think about that. And then you got to link pain to pleasure, right? The pain of being different, right? And you might say, well, if you're mentally tough, it's not pain, it's normal, right? You're different and you're okay with it. But
well, nobody's immune to it. So often, like, I look at it like, I give you an example, like the cold plunge, right?
I saw that
I'm big into cold plunging, and you know, people think that I'm some kind of like superhero, that I don't feel it. I feel exactly the same thing everyone feels. I'm not, you know, I don't have different skin or different blood. I feel the exact same thing. But it's the breathing and it's the mental side. So I'm choosing to stay in. I'm choosing to focus on my breathing. I'm making a decision, and it's non-negotiable. And that's the difference. And then to go back to your, like, kind of pain versus pleasure, and pleasure and pain, it reminds me of instant gratification and delayed gratification. A lot of people choose instant gratification instead of delayed gratification. They're choosing that sensation of tasting the donut in the moment and how wonderful it is. And I'm not denying that. Of course it tastes amazing.
It's a losing proposition.
But is that setting you up for health and wellness and longevity and things like that? Probably not. Done in small doses is fine, but you know, if you're doing it every single day, same thing with drinking, drugs, and things like that. If you're looking for instant pleasure, porn, what have you, then you're delaying real pleasure, something that can be long lasting, something that can make you feel better longer. And I actually, that was a great analogy, because it's so true. Like, and I think the the lesson there is like, what decisions are you making? Because ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's, you have choices in your life every single day. Are you making the right choices or are you making the wrong choices? And it's that, again, not to simplify it, but it is that simple. And if you're having struggle or problems making the right decisions, talk about it. It goes back to like, reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm making wrong decisions. Because most people that are making these decisions, even when they're high as a kite or they're drunk and alcohol, they're not waking up feeling good about themselves. Like, let's keep it real. Like, they're not. And in those moments, if they could just reach out and talk to somebody and just be honest and a little bit vulnerable and say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm smoking weed every single night. I'm drinking every single night and I'm 16 years old. I need help. It's don't feel like you're going to get punished for saying that. I would look at it as you're going to get relief, like someone's going to actually help you.
Punished when you're a kid, punished, and then as an adult, criticize, right?
Yeah.
Because how many adults out there struggle with things and they don't do it because they're afraid of it's going to hurt their reputation, it's going to hurt who they are.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I think kids are scared that they're going to get in trouble
because their reputation, it's not as strong yet.
Right. And then adults, they don't want to lose their reputation. But I think that if you wait, then you end up in a way worse situation. So, deal with it's almost like deal with a little pain to get over something that could be devastating later on. So, yeah.
And it's examples that you see around, we made a decision. We were going to take our kids to the viewing. At that time, our boy was 13. The little girl was 10 at that time.
Oh, wow.
Right? And we initially took our older one. He went to the viewing. We weren't going to take the girl. We weren't going to take the little one, And halfway through, I told my wife, I was like, Emily needs to come. She needs to see this. And she came to the viewing. And it was difficult.
I bet. I can't imagine.
She's asking, is that Jeremy? Right? Is that him?
Yeah.
Because you can't process, right? But the reason why, and people might say criticize that, but when you go through pain like this, one of the biggest examples you have is other people's pain is what causes you not to make decisions like that in the future. And that's something you can't replicate that, right? You can't erase that. And them watching that is an example in the future, right? Because if they ever want to make bad decisions, they got to remember the pain we were going through, which goes back to that pain and pleasure and pain. You got to associate decisions you make. Not only is it going to cause you pain, is it going to cause your family pain, right? And them watching that's big pain for them, huge pain for them. It's painful for me to be able to see. It's painful for my wife to see our kids see that. But we don't want any room for error. We don't want any room for error. We want them to identify good decisions could lead, that doesn't guarantee, right? All the time, right? Could lead to better results. Bad decisions lead to not good results, right?
Yeah.
And you have to make those better decisions along the road. And examples, you can either learn from your mistakes or the mistakes of others.
Right.
Challenges, a lot of people don't have those mistakes around them to identify of how devastating this could be in different situations in their lives,
Talk a little bit about, because I know you wanted to speak on it, a little about the regret.
Regret, yeah. So the regret, it's very powerful because, we got to a point where it was just, it was very overwhelming, and there was one night, there was a big situation, a lot of things were said, were very hurtful. We didn't talk for months. Me and Jeremy didn't talk, and I had it in my mind so many times. Your conscience is telling you to do something, but you don't do it. And I had it in my mind so many times, call him up, right? You guys have had many other challenges, and it always works out. Like, just call him up, right? And I would always say it's not the right time, not the right time, not the right time, until time runs out, right? Once time runs out, there's no going back. You can never heal that regret. It's something that's just, I think about it every day. Sometimes 2, 3, 5, 10 times a day I think about that, and it's a it's powerful when you experience real regret. And every day I want to try to minimize as much as I can anything I'm going to regret. I want to minimize as much as possible, because that feeling that I have of that regret, it just hurts. And just so many instances behind it, because, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know if my wife remembers this. That there was a Sunday night, we were watching Ghost. Remember that movie,
Yep,
Ghost? Yep. And such a sad movie.
Yeah.
Okay. And my wife tells me that night, because he was supposed to go to a rehab that Monday when he got shot.
Oh, wow.
He was supposed to check into a rehab. And we're watching this movie, and she tells me, you know, Jeremy wants to come see the kids, come to the house before he goes in. And I told her, I was like, tell him to call me. Because in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to reach out to him. Just have him call me. You know, I would have been accepting, right? But I didn't reach out to him. I told her, have him reach out to me. He never came to the house. How about if that night he would have came to the house, and maybe he would have stayed in the house that night, right? Who knows? Maybe this would have never happened. I'm not saying things would have turned out different. I'm not saying things would have worked out, but all those instances are things that lead to regret. And it goes back to in life, right? All the things that, anything you do that you regret after is probably not good, right?
Right.
And you got to minimize those, because regret's very, very powerful, and it hurts. It really does hurt.
I don't think it's my place to tell you like how to feel. Obviously, you know, I think that's something that you have to like.
And by no means,
you know,
am I trying not to lose your train of thought. I'm trying to put this on me, because I mean, my wife lost the son she gave birth to, right?
Yeah, but you both are going through something in your own way, and I don't think, you know, again, it goes back to like, you're not comparing your grief. You know, like everybody has the process that they have to go through, and your pain is just as important or what have you as her pain. It's just different. But I would say, hearing you talk about the regret, you know, like for someone that, like, I'm a very faith-based person, and I believe that everything happens for a reason. I really do.
I agree.
And I think you need to find purpose in your regret. I think you need to find purpose in your pain. And maybe this is exactly what it is. It's so that you can have a platform and a purpose to share your pain and your regret with other people, so they don't have to go through what you're going through. But that's going to require you to eventually let go of the regret. You're never going to move forward, and you're never going to have a strong enough voice if you're always living in that regret. And I'm not saying it's going to go away, but at some point you're going to have to accept it and say that this did happen for a reason. This is what was God wanted this to happen, whether you believe in God or not.
I do believe in God.
And if you do, then there's a reason for this. And we don't understand it because we're not God, you know, and it's not our job to understand it. But if you can find your purpose in this pain, then I promise you it's going to accelerate, because you're still young. Like, you're a young man, and you have these kids, like these beautiful kids that you're still raising, and you're going to have so many more moments, and you need to be living for them right now and for your wife. And if that regret gets in that way, then now you're going to, you know, it's going to mess that up. So I would just say, you know, keep doing this, you know, keep talking about it, keep doing something that will release that off of you, because it's not yours to bear, man. It's not. Like, God didn't do this to you so you sit there and beat yourself up every day. Like, it's not. I promise you that. I know that for a fact. Like, you need to give yourself some grace, because and the only person that can give you that is God. You know, pray for his grace just to fall upon you and give you a break, you know, because this is heavy, man. This is heavy, and it can really keep you down. And you're a guy, I can already tell, that, you know, has some balls, you know, like you're a man's man. Like, so you need to be that, and you need to be that for your family. You need to be that for people out there that need to hear things like this, that are also going through things like this. And the only way to do that is to move on. And again, it doesn't mean you forget by any means, but it means you forgive yourself, you know? Like, you got to forgive yourself. Anyways, I just went on a rant. But,
no, it's okay. I mean, listen,
I just felt led to tell you that because, it's as a father and as somebody that leads an organization and is trying to start a movement, hearing someone's, regret and pain like that, it hurts. Like, it's not fun to listen to. And it just kind of sparks in me, like, to speak life into you. You know what I mean? To give you, just to speak life into you. Say, hey man, you're not done yet. Like, this isn't your story. That was one chapter in your life. That's it, and it was a messed up chapter. Let's keep it real. But your story's it's not finished, and you have many more chapters to go with your existing family, with the people that you're influencing now by doing things like this. And so it's time to accelerate that, and live in that space.
I believe in that. I do think about that a lot because you never think to yourself that a message really could impact people. But there's just so many examples that people need help, and obviously my wife and I need help, right? We need to heal from this.
Yep.
But to your point, the healing is by helping others heal.
Yeah.
And it's not only a situation where you lose a loved one. How many people are hurting with not being honest with their kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, and me apologizing to my kid and my wife. I wasn't a bad father. I don't think I was a bad husband. It's just when you're not performing up to par in your life and you got more, it takes a lot to be able to be vulnerable enough to apologize and say you want to change, right?
Yeah. No, it's not easy. Yep.
Most people don't want to change.
Right.
And it's not that they want to change. They just don't want to do the work to change.
Right.
And they don't want to be open and vulnerable enough to say that they have to change, right? And there's so many people that want that. They just don't know how to attack it, right? And they don't know where to start, where to put the work in. And they think they got to go so far, right? It's true. It is when you look at it from a perspective when you're starting, it's even like I tell my wife, the situation we're going through, if you look how big it is, the scope of it, you think it'll never end.
Mm.
But if you can attack one day, if you can go one step at a time, one day at a time, and you can capitalize, if today was better than yesterday, you're on the right track.
You're making progress, exactly.
And if you do that for 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 7 days, you do it for a month, 6 months, 12 months, a year later, 2 years later, you've had a massive progression, which is to your point, right?
It's the compound effect. So
100%.
You want to do the small things, the things that seem insignificant in the moment, and you want to do those things every single day so that it compounds over time. And then eventually you get the results that you're looking for.
It's reading 10 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Seems so small, right?
Right.
You think 10 pages, that's not going to make a difference. It makes a huge difference.
Huge difference.
Because what you're doing is you're taking somebody else's challenges, successes, trials, overcoming, and you're adopting that into your mindset.
Yep.
So you just developed a new thought pattern that you didn't have before by being elevated by somebody else's thinking.
Right.
And it's back to the example. Either you learn from other people's mistakes or you learn from yours, right? And everything is out there. There's so many books out there, especially with social media today. There's so much out there to learn from. Like, you think about today.
It's information overload right now.
How old are you? What's your age?
45.
So you're 45. So you're 5 years older than me. I'm 40, right? So at 45, that 5-year gap between when I was a teenager and you're a teenager is huge.
Right, huge.
Because there was no social media. There was hardly no internet when I was a teenager, right?
Mm.
But if you think about back then, how you got information was only on the library, right?
Right.
You had to go seek that information. But I didn't have an access to a Manning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't have an access to a guy that was a strength and conditioning coach, had mindset training, or to an Andy Frisella, a David Goggins, a Wes Watson, an Ed Miles. Anybody that has a platform, you have access to these people now that are so elevated, and all you got to do is just click.
Exactly.
Watch, click and watch, click and watch, click, and you have years and years and years of material that you have access to.
I agree.
That's so powerful because it's something that can help you out. It could prepare you forward. It could propel you forward years just with months of work,
100%. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you just like, I just wanted to give you a platform to speak your truth. Is there anything else you want to talk about or say,
No, man, I think we got it all out.
All right.
The main thing is, as parents, is to get the word out. Parents out there, to be conscious with your kids, right?
Yeah.
Be conscious. Identify, look, search. I used to call my wife the FBI agent. That's what I used to call her, right?
Yeah.
We used to joke, me and Jeremy used to joke to say, do you go into a dungeon and you got 10 computers popped up, right? And we used to joke about that. And it still wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It still wasn't enough. Even with the way my wife was, it still wasn't enough. So you can never do enough.
Right.
To look and see and search and find and communicate with your kids. If you're an older person that's struggling with things like this, you got to view the pain you're going to cause others if you keep making the decisions you're making, right? And I'm not in no position to talk about people that have addictions. I've never had those type of addictions, but if you are struggling with that stuff, there's actually so much power in you being vulnerable and changing that, because you can change millions of lives with that one day, right? If you make the decision to change your life. And then if you don't, what's that going to cause in your family? And then at the same time, people that are struggling with grief, challenges, all those things, there's a process, right? And if you implement, like we talked about, every day, and I'm not saying I'm a master at this, but me and my wife have maneuvered a really messed up situation much better than probably 90-something% of the population. It's because of our thinking.
Right.
It's because of our thinking. It's about our process. It's about where we're at. It's about the work we do on a daily basis, and all that matters. And there's a lot of people need coaching on those areas.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people that are just lost. They don't have what do they look forward to on a daily basis, right? They're just lost. Right. They clock into work, clock out, come home, do the same thing the next day, look forward to the weekend, come back on Monday, repeat the same process. They don't have any clear goals of what they want. They have no disciplines, no focus. Their kids have very little relationships with them, right? They come home. They said they're spending time with their family, but they're spending time really with
their phone. Everybody's on their phones.
Their phone and watching TV, or they're gonna go hang out with their buddies because they're worried about what their buddies say. They're gonna go do something else. Kind of like, and that goes for men and women, right? Not only, I'm speaking out as a man because that's
of course
our position, but awareness, right? And it's, you can't. There's never a bad time for you to be vulnerable enough to say you need to change. That's actually probably the most attractive thing you can do as a leader, is admit that you need to change, but that you're doing the work necessary, right?
Right.
Not just that mean you need to change, but do the work necessary to change and put that effort forward, because others around you are gonna witness that, and they're gonna see that. And it's like you say, one person that you can impact could impact millions.
Exactly.
Because you don't know what it could turn into long term.
And you don't know so I also look at it like, so you could influence one person, and then you change their life, and then that person could influence 10 people, and that's, again, it goes back to that compound effect. Like, you never know what your influence would look like. So
absolutely.
Well, I appreciate it.
I'm very it's hard to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine.
I'm very grateful that we spoke today, that you gave me this platform to talk today, and I don't hope, because I know this is going to impact a lot of people. It gets out there. I don't know how many it will reach, but I know this is going to impact a lot of people, and there's a lot of people want to hear this stuff, and it's going to help them out. I know it's helping me out to be able to grieve, or to help on my wife to grieve during this situation. And get
I appreciate you reaching out, and reach out again, man. You're not in this alone. All right. So
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it, my man.